Hello, YouTube Model Railroader fans. I'm Ray. Welcome to the Boeville and Newtown's vlog number 7 for 2020. Right now it happens to be the 13th of February. Happy Valentine's Day. Early, but wanted to go over a couple of things. I think it's fairly interesting. Apparently, the things that I'm doing down here on the Boeville and Newtown have caused somewhat of a stir, which is a good thing, I guess. I've apparently become the topic of conversation for Big Bill's Bigger is Not Necessarily Better a little series. Shout out to Big Bill. But you know, he's right. It's interesting to, I guess, be in the position that I'm in with the B&N as it sits, and as they've so nicely put. And it's absolutely true, and I mentioned it, I think, a couple of vlogs back. And I realize this has become a weekly thing because there's the B&N is constantly changing now. There's been tweaks and fixes and so much going on, and you know, some folks, and in fact even myself, said, you know, at one point maybe I'm moving a little too quick with this. So I kind of did step back a little bit. I kind of slowed down. I think one of the reasons why it looks like I'm moving so fast is because of the fact that I've been spending a lot of time down here. I don't know how to put this, because, you know, my daughter goes through school. She's now a junior in college. My wife is one of these folks, she's not really into the hobby. My daughter was, but of course school's kind of taken that up. My wife likes to watch different TV shows. I'm not a big TV person. So my, I guess for lack of a better term, downtime is to come down here and mess with this thing. And sometimes, unfortunately, I get down here and I don't realize what time it is. You know, I try to make sure that I'm out of the basement by, say, 9:30ish. I usually try, and in fact, that's one of the reasons why I've got a clock sitting up over there, is so that way I can see what time it is, so I'm not down here for 6, 7, 8 hours, because I could, in fact, there's been a couple of weekends because of the weather where, you know, you can't do anything outside. It's too cold to do anything outside. We're not going anywhere. I've been spending, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours down here working. Because I have the freedom to do that, and I appreciate that from her. You know, she gives me the leeway to come down here and goof off with the railroad. So that's the reason why it looks like it's moving very fast. And to a point, maybe it is, or maybe it was. And in fact, getting back to this whole thing from Model Railroading Live, where they were talking about layouts in general, not just necessarily Big Bill's, because he's had, you know, the other week he had Bill Baronic, the track planner, on. This past week he had another. I'm sorry if I don't remember names. I have a hard enough time remembering what I did yesterday, much less names from different things. But you know, one of the things with this railroad is and that, like I said, it's been mentioned, and that is the fact that, you know, this isn't my first rodeo. You know, this layout is a culmination of trial and error, making mistakes, watching what other people have done, and trying not to duplicate or imitate, even though imitation is, you know, it is very good, but you don't want to imitate, you don't want what somebody else has got. You know, you don't want to do that. You know, it's nice to be able to sit down and say, hey, you know, that looks really cool. You know, make it your own. Make it your own. But you've got a lot of, I mean, nowadays, you know, Model Railroader for years was the It was the mainstay for model railroading. It really was. flipping through the pages of Model Railroader magazine, and then, you know, back in the heyday, Atlas with their track planning books, and the Comback with their track planning books from Lynn Westcott, and so on and so forth. You know, that was how you got it. You got it through paperback, and that was your source. You know, there were a couple other magazines, but let's be honest, Model Railroader was the biggest, and I'm not sure it still is, but because I don't subscribe to them anymore. I gave up on that a while back because I found this group. And, you know, we've got a heck of a community here, and if you have a question, you know, the nice thing is not only is it YouTube, it's Facebook. You got a question, throw it up there. Somebody's bound to have tried it, done it, whatever. So, you know, like I said, there seems to be an awful lot, seem to have caused quite a stir, and, you know, I appreciate the fact that that I've got folks that are looking to see what I'm doing, that are interested to see what's going on with this, wanting to see what the next step's going to be. And I've said, you know, yeah, right now I've got the track down, but I needed to get the track down. I needed to go ahead and get a couple of trains running on here because I needed to make sure that I had clearance, which is something else that even on a video that I just watched the other night that came from Model Railroader when they were doing their Dream Plan Build video series when I was a subscriber and I used to get those, you know, you don't want to just throw the track down, put up all the scenery, start running trains and realize that you don't have clearance for a passenger car. Or, wait a minute, that locomotive or this train won't make it up that incline. Well, that's one of the reasons why I didn't do inclines on here, because I didn't want to have to worry about inclines. You know, I've got a depression, I'm going to have hills, but, you know, the main line track itself is pretty much flat. I may change that. I've been thinking about that. I may make some changes, and that may be coming. But, you know, I'm still tinkering. You know, this is by no means, you know, how things are laid out right now is by no means how it may stay. As you know, I've already made at least one change on the opposite end where the farm was sitting and the lumber and mining company were sitting. So, you know, the main line track is basically pretty much where it's going to be. That's a given. It's the sidings, it's all the other little stuff that may still end up manipulating a little bit. But you got to make sure that you got clearance. You know, for your locomotives, your cars, or your rolling stock, you know, you've got to make sure that you got clearance, because if you go ahead and you built the thing all the way up and went to run it, oh heck. You know, now you got to go back and cut into whatever you had to make sure it fits. So, the only thing that's happened down here over the last couple of nights, and I'm going to go ahead and pick this thing up and hope I don't shake it too bad, is that I was playing around with a piece that came from, that wasn't good. I'm in the light, still in the light. I used a piece that came from that buddy of mine, that layout, that 4x8 sheet that he had, that his wife picked up, that had a control panel on it, and I wanted to use it because it's a neat looking panel. So what I did is I kind of modified it the other night. You know, this here was maybe Monday night-ish, I think. And as you can see, I'm not done with it yet. But, you know, this is going to be the yard panel. So you've got all the switches here, all the the push buttons for the switches that are going to be in the yard. You've got the original the Atlas twin that went to the roundhouse for the motor, running the motor and things of that nature. I've got the selector switch here for the different tracks that'll be off I salvaged all that off the old layout. There's a DP/DT switch here with center off that goes between running the track for the roundhouse and for running the motor on the roundhouse. So in one direction it does one thing, in the other direction it does something else. And of course then there's the dead track switch that'll be for the one lead. where the yard switcher will sit when there's a train being brought in. So that's kind of what this is going to be. And I've got my I'm going to be using it. Oh, that's the other thing with this. This is kind of nice. I'd actually, because I was mounting this thing the other night, I'd actually taken the power pack out of here. So the power pack will just sit there, and there we go. If I've got an issue with one of the switches, or if I got an issue with the wire, I can just fold this thing open and everything is right there. Yeah, I'm going to put a strain relief on this. Actually, the terminal strips are still on the back, so I have to mount them up, and once I do, this here won't be as tight. But that'll be nice to have that just kind of sitting out there and be able to. So that'll be strictly for the yard. I mean, that's all this is going to be for. It's going to be strictly for the yard. So I'm starting to get making some progress with the electric side here a little bit. Let me go ahead and zoom this back out, if it'll let me. Come on. No, that was in. I'm going to go out. Sheesh. Yeah, as you can see, I got all my stuff sitting up here. So I could actually do the work. But, so that's that. The other thing is, and I mentioned this too, I went ahead and got the wire for under the layout. And I'm stepping over this way, over by the lights in this place. And people wondered why I wanted to put overhead lighting over top of the layout, because it's dark as heck over there, and right here it's like, I'm the light. Amazon. That's a 100-foot roll of wire. This is 16 gauge, AW American wire gauge. I got 4 rolls of it. I got a roll of yellow, I got a roll of green, or roll of red, blue, and black. Those are going to be for the main lines. Those will get strung up underneath, so that way the main lines will just have their own runs, and then of course then the track itself will have a drop down. You know, you'll have from the rails, there'll be 2 wires coming down, and there'll be suitcase connected into those. So that's probably going to be the next thing I'm going to work on. I need to get a hold of my buddy Matt and have him come over, now that I can kind of use my hand. Have him come over and do the electrical work for me. Once that's done, then I can actually start working on some of the other things that I want to work on. Like I said, I'm thinking about still making some changes, still making some tweaks, still have some things to play with. You know, like I said, this is by no means right now set in stone. I mean, that's the reason why it's there, because it's there so I can figure out where I've got issues and get them fixed. And if I don't like what I see, I can go ahead and fix it now. Because, like I mentioned to somebody else a while back, scenery to me right now is the farthest thing from my brain. I mean, it is the farthest thing. Only thing I'm looking at now is getting this thing to where it's 100% operational, so that way I can do all the testing, make sure everything works, and then I can go on from there, because I still have to kind of take things up and glue things down, and before I start gluing anything, I want to make sure that it's right. So that's going to be the coming weeks. That'll be the next step. So stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some things on here, and then I'll go ahead and we'll be back. All right, it's now Sunday, the 16th of February, and I'm getting ready to wrap this up so I can go ahead and put it up on YouTube. But Did a couple of things over the last couple of days. Not as much as I wanted to. I had some things that I had to take care of. I had some other things that came up. But the reality is I'm actually prepping for the next stage, which happens to be testing freight cars. Sounds, again, I'm sure some people would be questioning that motive, questioning why I would even want to do that yet. The thing is that I've got to test this thing. I've got to beat this thing up now before I actually start gluing stuff down. Because once it's glued down, it's awfully hard to change. Anybody who's been in the hobby for a while that's done stuff like this, they know it's better to make sure that the track and all is bulletproof before you start gluing anything. The other thing is that I think I mentioned it in the last vlog, or actually earlier maybe in this one, that I went back and was looking and was thinking about how I laid this out, and was contemplating actually going ahead and maybe making the section over here, this section over this way, going over towards the switchback here, actually raising that up a little bit. Well, there's two problems. First off, I'm out of foam. When I went ahead and laid down Boeville, the passenger routes in Boeville, I used up the last of my half-inch styrofoam, which means I'd have to go get more, which isn't an issue. Just wasn't going to happen this weekend. That's problem one. Problem two is, the more I thought about it, if I go ahead and I raise this up and give myself a little bit of an incline, I've got to make a bunch of different changes, and I'm not 100% certain I'm really ready for that yet. I mean, like I said, I kind of like the idea of it being somewhat one level, but, you know, here again, that goes back to, well, now you've gone ahead and just basically just put everything to the plywood. No, that's how things were done before. This isn't being done quite that way. Yeah, I've now got stuff on top of foam. I'm going to be getting some road bed to put underneath the track, so I raise it up even further. However, one of the reasons why I was actually thinking about raising up this section here, that's over here, and I'll pan back down again. One of the reasons why I was thinking about doing that is the fact that over here, where this little thing is sitting, this is where I wanted to put a slight little, maybe like a stream or something of that nature for my my water wheel. Well, the thing is the fact that it's really not thick enough here. You know, I'd either have to cut the wood down and drop this section like I did for the other depression, or I'd have to raise this up a little bit to where the water isn't right at track level. So that's the reason why I was thinking about raising this section up, and I'm still contemplating it. It's not completely off the boards yet, but it's one of those things. I'm gonna sleep on it a little longer. Let's put it that way. So that's one thing. I did work on that, like I showed you all. I did work on the panel for the yard. I've got it together. I don't have it wired up completely yet, and then I just decided to make a couple of changes to that. I'll bring those up on the next vlog. The other two things that should be happening within the next week or so is my buddy Matt is going to come over and help getting the electric for the railroad actually tied into the main panel, which means I have to finish actually wiring in the dimmer switch. I wired in one dimmer switch for the overhead. I haven't done the other one yet. And I still haven't figured out what I'm actually doing with the overhead lighting yet. Again, that's not a priority at the moment. The priority is making sure that the track work is bulletproof. So once he comes over here, I'm not sure if it's going to be maybe Thursday or Saturday. Not sure yet. But that's one of the things that's going to be happening obviously this week, is I have to finish that dimmer switch. The other thing is I was talking to my buddy Big John, and Big John is, I guess, a bit of a Excel whiz. So he's going to help me out with a couple of things on the railroad. Again, this might be one of those things where I'm getting a little bit ahead, but it's better to start thinking about some of this stuff now than what it is when it's actually time to start really messing around with this thing, actually start playing around with this thing like a chess game. He's actually going to look into making a way to where the dispatcher is going to be able to tell where a locomotive is at any one given time on the railroad. One. Two, be able to tell the last time that engine was run, so that we're not running them back to back to back to back to back constantly. And three, what its home base is going to be. Is its home base going to be Richmond? Is it going to be Harrisburg? Is it going to be Boeville? And we'll be able to, when those locomotives are in the hidden yards, we'll be able to tell the last time that they've been run and what train they should be put on. Now, anybody who's been around for a while knows that a lot of model railroaders, in fact, I think a lot of YouTubers now are doing the same thing, where they're using a car forwarding system. It's a very unique system, very well put together. I started tinkering with it when I had the old railroad, even though I really wasn't, the cars really didn't go anywhere. Now I've got some place for them to go. So with the 4-cycle waybills, a car can route itself through the railroad without having to have a switch list and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Locomotives, on the other hand, really don't do that. At least not the way that I would like to do them. I mean, you don't go ahead and put a 4-cycle waybill onto a locomotive so it can route itself through the railroad. Doesn't seem like that makes a lot of sense. So having something else that the dispatcher can work on, that's what we're going to do. So I know I just realized that I've been talking for the last 7.5 minutes, and I think the first part of this video was 20-some minutes, so I'm sorry that it took so long. And you know what? Hopefully next weekend I'll be able to do some more stuff down here. One of the other things that I was actually working on today was going ahead and sorting through some of the stuff that I've got. I've got some other boxes that are coming from work. I've got 4 more of them sitting at work. I was only able to bring one home because of being somewhat still incapacitated. So I gotta go ahead and get those other ones here so I can start sorting through my rolling stock and I can figure out what I've got. So with that being said, you all know the deal. You wait for the highball, green tracks ahead. Be safe, God bless. We'll catch you all next time. See ya.